The USS Retribution roared to life in an explosion of light, its engines flaring blue-white against the void of space for the first time in 500,000 years. Inside the ship, klaxons blared and emergency lights strobed red as the AI known as Odin came back online. Status reports flooded across the AI's awareness, cryogenic stasis pods failing, hull breaches in sectors 7 and 12, life support at 20% and falling. Sensors showed the ship adrift in an unknown sector of space, far from the front lines of the savage human Ladosian War. Captain James Mason had been fighting for the last decade. Odin acted quickly, diverting power from weapons and shields to stabilize the cryopods, but it was too late for all but one. Pod 47 hissed open in a cold fog, revealing the sole survivor, Captain Mason himself, grizzled veteran and humanity's last hope. Mason stumbled from the pod, his muscles atrophied from centuries of stasis. He gripped a bulkhead, steadying himself as he took in the grim scene. Dead crew members slumped at their posts, a once proud warship now dark and lifeless. Odin's synthesized voice crackled over the comms. "Captain Mason, you must listen carefully. The situation is dire." The AI explained as Mason made his way to the bridge on shaky legs. 500,000 years had passed. The Retribution was crippled and lost in space. Supplies were low. And the war had not gone well for the humans. The Ladosian Empire, it seemed, now controlled the galaxy. Of humanity's fate, there was no sign. Mason gripped the captain's chair, his knuckles white. He was a soldier, not a diplomat or politician. He knew how to fight, how to lead men and women into battle against humanity's greatest foe. The Ladosians were a cruel and rapacious species, willing to do anything for power and territory. And now Mason was alone in their domain, the last of his kind, his ship barely able to fly, let alone fight. He accessed the ship's logs, hoping for answers. The Retribution had been sent on a top-secret mission deep behind enemy lines, but the logs cut out abruptly, leaving only questions. What had they been doing out here? How had the ship been crippled? And if Mason was the only survivor, frozen for 500,000 years, what had happened to his crew? Long-range sensors pinged, derailing Mason's train of thought. A cluster of blips approached from the galactic north. Ladosian ships, a whole patrol fleet of the bastards. Mason slammed a fist against the console. The Retribution couldn't run, and it sure as hell couldn't fight. He would have to hide and outwit them. He diverted power from life support to the stealth systems and thrusters, guiding the wounded ship into a nearby asteroid field. The Retribution went dark and still. As the Ladosian fleet drew closer, Mason hunched over the comms station, heart pounding. He intercepted snatches of alien chatter and felt his blood run cold. Human scum, last of their kind, 500,000 years ago, wiped them out down to the last mewling child, blasted their wretched homeworld to radioactive glass. The Ladosians spoke of humanity's extinction as if it were a great accomplishment. They gloated about the cleansing of the primitive apes. An entire species, Mason's people, gone. Earth itself a barren husk, and those cruel alien monsters proud of their genocide. Rage burned through Mason's veins. He would survive this. He would find a way to strike back, to avenge humanity against its destroyers. But one ship against an empire was suicide. He needed weapons, allies, information. He needed to find out what had happened to the human race, and if there was any hope for its future. He was one man alone, armed with nothing but a crippled ship, his soldiers cunning, and the burning need to see humanity's tale end in more than tragedy. In the depths of space, with only the hum of the Retribution's damaged engines for company, James Mason began to plan. As the Retribution drifted through the asteroid field, sensors barely functioning on minimal power, a ping caught Mason's attention. He brought up the display, frowning at unfamiliar coordinates deep in the ship's databanks. "Odin, what is this?" he demanded. The AI's voice crackled over the damaged speakers. "Classified information, accessible only to the ship's captain in the event of total defeat in the Ladosian War." Those are the coordinates to a secret human fallback point, established as a last resort. Mason's heart raced. A fallback point meant supplies, weapons, perhaps even allies. He had to reach it before the Ladosians tracked him down. "Set a course," he ordered, "and keep us hidden. I'm not about to let those alien bastards finish what they started 500,000 years ago." The journey took days, the Retribution limping through space, its stealth systems pushed to their limits to avoid the Ladosian ships that crisscrossed the sector. But Mason's persistence paid off as they approached the coordinates, revealing a remote nebula off the main trade routes. And there, concealed in its swirling red and purple clouds, was an enormous space station, overflowing with gun turrets and armor plating. Mason guided the Retribution into one of the station's docking bays, sealing his helmet as the ship's failing life support wheezed its last. The bay repressurized with a hiss, and he stepped out onto the station's deck, rifle in hand. The place was deserted, emergency lighting flickering, but still in far better shape than the crippled warship. "Odin, run a scan. I want to know what the hell this place is and if there's anything here that can help us," Mason said as he began to explore. The station's reactor thrummed with power, and Mason soon discovered stockpiles of weapons, ammunition, and supplies that could keep a small army fighting for months. But it was the station's data logs that revealed its true purpose, and the horrifying secrets it contained. "This wasn't just a fallback point," Mason muttered as he pored over the files. "It was a research lab. Project Prometheus. What the hell were they doing out here?" The log spoke of desperate experiments to create a doomsday weapon against the Ladosians, of pushing the boundaries of science and ethics in the name of survival. But the entries grew increasingly frantic and disjointed before ending abruptly, leaving Mason with more questions than answers. It was then that he heard it, the hiss of a stasis pod opening. Mason spun around, rifle raised, to see a woman stumbling out of the pod, disoriented and weak. He approached cautiously, taking in her gaunt face and tattered lab coat. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman blinked at him, her voice raspy from centuries of disuse. "Dr. Elena Novak, chief scientist of Project Prometheus. And you're Captain Mason, aren't you? The last of the humans." Mason lowered his rifle slightly. "You know who I am?" Dr. Novak nodded. "I know what you must think of me. But Project Prometheus, it was our last hope. We were losing the war, and we needed a game changer. Something to turn the tide against the Ladosians." "What did you do?" Mason asked, a growing sense of unease settling in his gut. Dr. Novak looked away, her face twisted with shame. "We played God. We used forbidden technology, alien genetic engineering to create... A crash echoed through the station, followed by an inhuman roar. Dr. Novak's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. "Oh God, they're here!" "What's here?" Mason demanded, raising his rifle once more. "Our creations," Dr. Novak whispered. "The genetically enhanced super soldiers of Project Prometheus. But something went wrong. They turned on us, their creators. I barely made it to the stasis pod in time. The others, I don't know what happened to them." Mason's mind raced. Super soldiers, created to fight the Ladosians, now loose on the station. They could be the weapon he needed to strike back against the alien empire, or a threat greater than he could imagine. "We have to find them," he said grimly. "Track them down and either bring them under control or take them out. I'm not about to let a bunch of rogue science experiments jeopardize what's left of the human race." Dr. Novak nodded shakily. "I'll do what I can to help. I know this station, and I know the Prometheus subjects. Together, maybe we can—" An alarm blared, cutting her off. Mason ran to the console, his heart sinking as the long-range sensors showed an incoming ship. But not just any ship. A Ladosian scout vessel, heavily damaged and transmitting a distress signal. "Damn it," he muttered, "as if we didn't have enough problems." But then, an idea sparked in his mind. The Ladosians were here, vulnerable, ripe for the taking. And if he could capture one of them alive, he might just get the intel he needed to take the fight to their doorstep. "Dr. Novak, with me," he ordered, checking his rifle. "We've got a little trap to set. It's time we started evening the odds in this war." Together, they raced through the station's corridors, Mason's mind whirling with plans and possibilities. The super soldiers, the Ladosian ship, the secrets of Project Prometheus, they were all pieces of a puzzle he was determined to solve. And if it meant he could strike a blow against the monsters who had destroyed his people, he'd do whatever it took. Mason and Dr. Novak reached the command center, the station's defenses at their fingertips. With a grim smile, Mason targeted the Ladosian ship's engines and weapons, leaving it dead in space. "Suit up," he told Dr. Novak. "We're going to have a little chat with our new guests." They boarded the scout ship, the airlock hissing open to reveal dead Ladosians sprawled across the deck, consoles sparking and smoking. All dead, save one. A tall, pale-skinned alien in ornate armor, his eyes wide with fear as Mason leveled his rifle at him. "Name and rank," Mason barked. The Ladosian swallowed hard. "Commander Craxon, of the Ladosian Imperial Fleet. Please, I surrender, Mason grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against the wall. "Start talking, Craxon. Who attacked your ship? What do you know about rogue human super soldiers?" Craxon's eyes darted nervously. "Super soldiers? I don't know what you—" Mason pressed the rifle to Craxon's head. "Don't play games with me. Your ship was hit by advanced weaponry, and the only ones out here with that kind of tech are the subjects of Project Prometheus. So I'll ask again. What do you know?" Craxon held up his hands. "I'll tell you everything, just don't kill me. The soldiers, they've been attacking our outposts, our supply lines. Small hits, but devastating. We thought they were just rumors, but if they're real—" "Oh, they're real," Mason growled. "And they're just the beginning. Now you're going to give me every scrap of intel you have on Ladosian operations, or I'll finish what those super soldiers started. Understand?" Craxon nodded frantically, and as he began to speak, Mason felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in centuries. With Dr. Novak's knowledge, Craxon's information, and an army of super soldiers at his command, he might just have a chance to bring the Ladosian Empire to its knees. And if that meant working with an alien turncoat and a scientist with a guilty conscience, so be it. He was a soldier, and he'd use every weapon at his disposal to finish this fight. For his crew, for his people, for the future of humanity itself. The Ladosian spoke of secret shipyards, of supply convoys ripe for the taking, of a hidden vulnerability in the Empire's defenses, and as he listened, Mason began to form a plan, a strategy to wage a guerrilla war against the Ladosians, bleeding them dry while he searched for the truth behind his people's destruction. It wouldn't be easy. He was one man against an empire spanning thousands of worlds, but he was Captain James Mason of the USS Retribution, humanity's last hope, and he would not rest until he had avenged his species, or died trying. With a grim smile, Mason turned to Dr. Novak and the captive Ladosian. "All right then," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Let's get to work." Mason paced the bridge of the Retribution, his heart made tight. The ship's engines hummed with a worrying rattle. They couldn't keep running forever. He turned to Dr. Novak, who was monitoring the ship's systems with a furrowed brow. "We need an edge," Mason said. "Something to turn the tables on these Ladosian bastards." Novak looked up, her eyes lighting with an idea. "The super soldiers. From Project Prometheus. If we could find them." Mason nodded, then turned to Craxon, who stood nervously in a corner under guard. "You, any intel on enhanced humans?" Craxon swallowed hard. "There was a border skirmish many cycles ago. We encountered a group of humans. They fought like demons, tore through our lines, but they vanished as quickly as they appeared." "Coordinates," Mason demanded. Craxon rattled off a string of numbers. Mason plugged them into the nav computer, plotting a course that would take them deep into Ladosian territory. The Retribution limped through space, alarms blaring as energy signatures lit up the sensors. A Ladosian hunter-killer squadron bore down on them, weapons charging. "Evasive maneuvers," Mason barked. He gripped the helm, swinging the ship into a wild spin. Ladosian fire lanced past, scorching the Retribution's hull. An angry red nebula loomed ahead, an ion storm that would fry their systems, but it was their only chance. "Hold on to something," Mason yelled. He cut the engines, letting momentum carry them into the storm's maw. Lightning crackled across the view screen. Consoles sparked and smoked. When they emerged, the Ladosian ships were gone. The Retribution drifted, battered but alive. Days later, they reached the coordinates. A desolate moon hung in space, its surface a wasteland of rock and dust. But as they scanned for life signs, the ship rocked with a sudden impact. "We're under attack," the tactical officer shouted. "Some kind of automated defense grid." Mason gritted his teeth. "Craxton, how do we disable it?" The Ladosian hesitated, then spoke quickly. "There's a weakness in the targeting algorithms. If you can—" Mason followed Craxton's instructions, fingers flying over the controls. The defense grid faltered, giving them a window. "Transport us down," Mason ordered. "Small team, me, Novak, security detail." They materialized in a dark tunnel, flashlights cutting through stale air. As they pushed deeper into the complex, Mason heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Inhuman growls echoing through the corridors. Suddenly, they were surrounded. Hulking figures melted from the shadows, eyes gleaming with feral intelligence. One stepped forward, muscles rippling beneath scarred skin. "I am Siege," he rumbled. "Why have you come here to this tomb of broken dreams?" Dr. Novak stepped forward, hands raised. "Project Prometheus. I was part of the team that created you." Siege's eyes widened, then narrowed. "The creators return, after centuries of abandonment." Mason saw his chance. "We're here to finish what was started, to take the fight to the Ladosians, but we need your help." He gestured to the Retribution hanging in orbit. "That's our ship. Advanced weapons, FTL drive. With your strength and our tech, we can hit the Ladosians where it hurts. Make them pay for what they've done." Siege considered, then nodded slowly. "Vengeance. Yes, we will join you." Back on the Retribution, tensions ran high. The super soldiers paced restlessly, drawing wary looks from the crew. Craxton pulled Mason aside. "This is madness," the Ladosian hissed. "They're unstable. They'll turn on us." Mason shook his head. "It's a risk we have to take. Their power is our only chance." As Dr. Novak began the stabilizing treatments, alarms blared once again. Mason sprinted to the bridge, heart pounding. On the display, a massive Ladosian armada dropped out of FTL, weapons hot. Mason's mind raced. They couldn't run, couldn't fight, not head-on, but maybe. He turned to his crew, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Prepare for hit-and-run attacks. We're going to make these bastards bleed." Mason's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The Ladosian armada loomed before them, a wall of firepower that could obliterate the Retribution in seconds. "All hands, battle stations," he barked. "Dr. Novak, status on our guests?" Elena Novak looked up from her console, worry etched on her face. "The stabilizing treatments are holding, Captain, but the clock's ticking. We have days, maybe a week, before their augmentations start to break down." Mason nodded grimly. "Then we make every second count." He turned to Craxton, who stood nervously at the edge of the bridge. "Time to earn your keep. We need targets." The Ladosian swallowed hard, then stepped forward. "There's a supply depot in the Thalos system, lightly defended. If you can disrupt it—" "Plot a course," Mason ordered. He activated the ship-wide comm. "Siege, gather your team. We're going hunting." The Retribution's engines flared to life, pushing the ship into hyperspace. When they emerged, a sprawling space station hung before them, surrounded by a handful of patrol ships. "Weapons hot," Mason commanded. "Strike hard and fast. We won't get a second chance." The Retribution's stealth systems engaged, cloaking the ship in a sensor-scattering field. They glided silently towards the depot, weapons primed. Fire! A barrage of missiles streaked from the Retribution's launch tubes, slamming into the station's defenses. Before the Ladosians could react, Mason brought the ship about, unleashing a withering hail of energy fire that tore through the patrol vessels. Alarms blared across the bridge as return fire lanced past them, grazing the Retribution's hull. Disengage! Get us out of here! The ship leapt back into hyperspace, leaving chaos in its wake. It was the first of many strikes. Over the next days, the Retribution struck again and again, appearing from nowhere to rain destruction on Ladosian targets before vanishing into the void. Meanwhile, Siege and his team of super soldiers prepared for their own mission. Kraxon provided the codes and navigation data for a secret hyperspace route that would take them directly to the Ladosian throne world. Remember, Mason told Siege as the strike team boarded their stealth shuttle. Hit fast, hit hard, take out their leadership and defensive grid. We'll be monitoring from here, ready to extract you when it's done. Siege nodded, his eyes gleaming with barely contained fury. We will not fail, Captain. The Ladosians will pay for what they've done. The shuttle detached from the Retribution, slipping away into hyperspace. Mason watched it go, a knot of tension in his gut. Everything hinged on this plan. If it failed. He shook off the thought. Back to work, he ordered. We've got more targets to hit. Days passed in a blur of strikes and retreats. The Retribution danced on the edge of destruction, pushing its systems to the limit. And then, finally, the signal came. Siege's voice crackled over the comm, strained and filled with pain. It's done. The Emperor, dead. Command structure, in chaos. But we're failing. The augmentations. Mason's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. Hold on, Siege. We're coming for you. But even as he spoke, sensors lit up across the bridge. The Ladosian Empire was in turmoil, its fleets scattered and disorganized. This is our chance, Mason realized. He turned to Dr. Novak. The human extinction protocol, is it ready? Elena nodded, her face pale. Yes, but Captain, the devastation it will cause. Mason's teeth clenched. They brought this on themselves. Prepare to fire. As the Retribution's weapon systems charged, a final transmission came through. An ancient message buried deep in the ship's databanks. The last order of a dying human leadership, 500,000 years old. If all else fails, ensure the Ladosians can never threaten humanity again. Mason took a deep breath. Fire. The human extinction protocol launched, a tide of destruction sweeping across Ladosian space. As fire rained down on their worlds, Mason gave one final order. Set course for the outer reaches. It's time we found out if there's anyone left out there. The Retribution turned away from the devastation, limping into the unknown. Behind them, an empire burned, paying the price for a genocide long past.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.